Hello, America. This is Daryl Fielding coming to you with another episode of The Triumph. So, we have back with us again one of our favorites. He's a real estate investor and entrepreneur, Don Rushing. He holds his real estate license with Keller Williams South Valley. Don, thanks for being back.
Yeah, great to be back. I always enjoy our conversations.
Yeah, we love having you on the show and appreciate your insight. So, Don, today's topic, we wanted to talk a little bit about this era of unparalleled prosperity that we're
Hmm.
seeing. And I wanted to get your take on what you feel like are some of the keys or the key to this unparalleled prosperity
Yeah.
that we're experiencing today.
You know what? Let's start off. I want to bring up just two. I want to preface this conversation with two thoughts, 2 points. Number one, I just want to. I'm going to give myself permission. Like this is just a conversation of thoughts that we're going to have, and I'm going to give myself permission to that. Maybe all my ideas aren't great ideas. The point of this is just to initiate and spark conversation. I think there's a lot of important, really important conversations that we're currently not having in our culture, in our society, even as a species. So really, that's kind of part of my purpose is just to evoke those conversations, encourage those conversations that I believe we're just being left out right now. So that having been said, you know, I also want to share the idea of you don't have to know the answer to a conversation to initiate the conversation. In fact, the point of conversation is to get those thoughts thinking and get people engaged, and through that, the answer will eventually reveal itself. So, with this conversation today, it's a deep one. It's something that's on my mind every day. It's actually the first thought I have when I wake up and the last thought I have when I go to bed, but that doesn't mean I know the answers. And so I'm going to give myself permission to not know the answers, but and I'm going to and because I'm able to give myself that permission, that creates a space where everybody else has that same permission. So, and even some of the greats throughout history, some of the great orators, some of the great leaders, even they had some not so good ideas, or but they didn't let that stop them. They were all about sparking conversation and getting people to think. So, and secondly, I'm also going to allow myself to be imperfect and still have a voice. It seems like I don't know, we're currently in an era where a lot of people will say, when someone is speaking or whatever, they'll point out something in their past or whatever. You know what? Let's just give everybody permission to be human. And I would further point out that it's actually my imperfections and your imperfections that make us perfect for contributing to the rest of the world and to contributing to other people. Because quite frankly, if I was perfect, I would not be relatable, and I would probably not be, and so would anybody else. They would be completely unrelatable and just really would lose credibility. I mean, if I'm imperfect, what does someone who's perfect really have to offer me? Because they're not going to have the same experiences, therefore they're not going to have the same viewpoints, and not viewpoints, excuse me, but the same viewpoints from those experiences of hardship, failure, mistakes, being wrong, and yes, even doing things of low character. So that's all of us. And, with that, I think we can enter this conversation with an open mind and just create a space where all we're doing is sharing ideas and engaging conversation to get those ideas to continue to grow and flow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is a really good topic. I love, I think I'll start by saying I've had the impression for quite a while now, a few years now, that this 100 years, this century, the year 2000 to the year 2100, I am confident, 100% certain that this century is going to be looked back on thousands of years from now as a marked era in humanity. And I think they're going to look back in awe at us, and they'll look back at this 100 years as a turning point in humanity, where we went from one level to the next level. And now, that having been said, when I do mention that to most people, the most common reply I get is like, what are you smoking? Because are you not are you not seeing what's going on? So yeah, we're basically the beginning of August 2020, and of course it's been an interesting year. And look, I get, I'm not saying that there's not bad shit going on, because I get it. There is. But my suggestion is that that bit of chaos or drama, whatever you want to call it, that we see going on right now, division, that's actually an indication that's your signal, that's your red flag, that's your that's the signal that we are actually on the brink of a major breakthrough. And that may sound a little bit, I'm not sure how that sounds, but if you look back through the history of humanity, that has been the pattern every time there's been a major breakthrough. Major breakthroughs have always followed time periods of unrest or stress, things like that. I think you'd see that pattern in your own life as well. And I'll tell you another thing. The world's greatest leaders and teachers that have ever walked the planet, they were born in hardship. They were created through hardship, not sunshine. So you can rest assured that that new group of leaders and teachers is being formed, being forged and created right now from this experience. And we all are growing from this experience. So, and just like the butterfly, right before it turns into the magnificent butterfly, right before it, morphs into something new, it has that experience of being wrapped in its cocoon, and what is that experience like? And then it emerges as the butterfly. Like, that's the pattern throughout history. So that having been said, my point is I'm confident, regardless of what the sensational story is today, to get your attention regardless of what that is, we are on the cusp of and about to have a breakthrough, and step into a new era of truly unparalleled prosperity in humanity. And unparalleled, means it's unmatched. It's never there will have never been anything like it before.
So are you saying that we're getting ready to enter into an era of unparalleled, or are you saying that right now we're in an era of unparalleled prosperity? We're about to take a new.
What your second statement is true if you compare it to the remainder of history. But what I am referring to is we are about to step out of this era and into a new marked era. And that's what I say, my light turned off. That's what I say, centuries from now, humanity will look back on this time period as when that shift took place that got them to the world they enjoy.
What does that shift look like? What is going to be some of the key defining attributes of this new era we're entering into?
So it's a twofold answer, and I say twofold because first I'm going to tell you what is going to lead to that, and then what that's going to look like. The key to entering into this era of unparalleled prosperity for humanity, when I think about how prosperous we are right now in humanity, where even the most impoverished among us, at least in the United States, for the most part, still have access to running water or sanitation kind of thing. Like that's kind of mind-blowing, to be in extreme poverty and still have access to those things, or maybe even a phone or a computer through public libraries, which currently they don't have that because those are closed. But the key to unlocking this new era, or entering into this new era, is equality. And equality is going to lead to unity, but equality is going to lead to and usher in that unparalleled prosperity. And I'll tell you briefly how. Just a small way of thinking about it. It's so much larger than this, but look at around the world and look at the world we've built. And yes, we have our problems, but there's never been a world like we have now, right? Our mega cities that we've built, and yes, we still have some struggles with the environment, but look at the strides we've made since the 70s with the environment that continue today. And we're about to make the shift away from fossil fuels as our source of energy, and the cities, the communities we've built. We now have roughly 5 billion humans connected to the internet, and some predict that the remaining 3 billion is going to be within the next 5 to 6 years. So we really have created something magnificent. But think about this: we've created that with not everyone involved, not everyone fully contributing, because for whatever reason, that's probably a different topic. We've decided there's been a dominant culture that hasn't been all inclusive. It's left some portions of the population out. So my point is when you look around and see what we've created with only a portion of the population, and my suggestion is probably about half of the population contributing. And I say half because, until recently, not only in America, but throughout the world, until recently, the female gender has not been a participant in the world we've been creating in larger numbers. And they're still not even, the dominant culture is still not letting that, look, roughly half the population on the planet's female. And, so when I look at that, I think, we've kind of been playing this with one arm, one hand tied behind our back. Look at what we've created with half, a male dominant culture. What would it look like if we got the other half of the team playing? And then we can move beyond that and point out our hang-ups still on skin color, and how many have been unable to contribute simply because their skin color was not matching the dominant cultures. So what I'm trying to point out is when we decide to let go of that limiting dominant culture idea, then that's when we can engage the remainder of the population. And so when I look around the world and see what we've created with only a portion of us contributing, I think you can easily, if not more, but you could easily double what you see when we get the other half of us on the team. Right now, they've been sitting on the bench waiting to get in, and we've been letting little bits and pieces in. But when are we going to just decide that it's when you enter an era of unparalleled prosperity, it benefits everybody. And I think there's a little bit of a fear of, well, and actually it's not a little bit of a fear. There is a fear, and it's probably the biggest lie in humanity, which is that there's not enough of everything to go around. And so if we let the other half come into the game, then that's going to be less for me. And that is the worst lie in humanity right now. It's just simply not true. And all the evidence that there is no lack of any resource is to the contrary. So, when I think about what a world where all of us are contributing, all of us are allowed to contribute, that's gonna usher in that age. And so it's equality. That is the next step, true equality, where we let go of a dominant culture. So where a smaller group is controlling a larger portion of the resources. And, the thing is there's more resources than that group can even imagine right now, but it's untapped, and we can't tap into it until we get everyone contributing. So now what's that going to look like? It's my belief that over the next 2 to 3 decades, at the shortest, maybe sooner, and certainly by the turn of the next century, when we go to true equality, that's going to mean a few things. You're really looking at a different way of organizing a civilization. True equality is gonna mean that we're gonna change the way we educate ourselves. We're gonna change the way we govern ourselves. We're gonna move past our petty differences. We're gonna move past all of our cultural differences. We're gonna move past all of our religious differences. And you're going to see armies disbanded and disappear. And I believe all of that is going to happen at the latest by the turn of the next century. That having been said, I feel very fortunate to be alive today to get to actually witness and be part of this 100-year period that's going to be talked about and pointed to and revered thousands of years from now. So that's what I've had a sense of is coming. And the true answer to our next level of prosperity is equality. And equality is going to lead to unity.
So how do you define equality? I mean, there's a lot of ways people might look at that. Is it equality of things? Is it equality of opportunity? Is it equality of outcomes? How
And this is such a great question. And this is where I'm going to refer to the beginning where I do not have all the answers, nor do I believe all the answers can come through me or even just one person. They're going to come in pieces through different people, and it's going to be sparked by these conversations. So, but as I've thought a lot about this and projected myself into that future in my mind, I can tell you this, that as long as there is one human on this planet who enjoys a privilege, an exemption, a resource, or any type of circumstance that every other human on the planet does not enjoy or have access to, we have, that equals inequality. So that much I can tell you. These current ideas that we have, that we keep toying with, and I say toying with because they're really expired ideas. So ideas of special, any one group, however you want to define that group, which we currently use labels. So, if it's a skin color, if it's a gender, if it's a group of people in a geographic location, if it's a group of people that, like for example, most people are unaware, and this is coming to the forefront right now with the idea of policing, which has been around for centuries. And as a criminal justice major, and disclosure, I didn't finish college. So if that disqualifies me in some people's minds from being able to initiate conversation, so be it. But I'm going to continue to initiate that conversation. So I studied criminal justice and the origins of it. It was very fascinating to me, and I think it was an important stepping stone in the organization of civilization. But it is an expired idea that no longer serves us, that we continue to toy with. And all you have to do is, within 5 minutes of looking at any media newscast, you can see and just look around your own community right now, that idea no longer works. And it's an idea that that people, though they may not be able to articulate it, what you're seeing is it's an idea that humanity is actually no longer okay with. It's no longer acceptable to continue business as usual when it comes to policing or the criminal justice system. So this idea of justice and punishment, which, the simplified way to think about that is, I'm either going to dangle a bigger carrot in front of you to motivate you, or Daryl, I will either threaten you with a bigger stick. and that gets really hotly debated. And I'm really not sure why, because there's one point that I would illustrate that really makes it that really makes it it's fairly unarguable, though I do encourage other viewpoints, and I would love to hear them, because if it can get me to a higher level of thinking, then it's not about me being right. It's about me continually getting to a higher level of thinking. So that's what conversation does. But something I like to point out with the idea of justice and punishment is, aside from the fact that it's actually a really lazy way of thinking, it doesn't work. And if it was gonna work, it would have worked by now. The idea of justice and punishment has been around for centuries. It's been around almost through all of humanity. So I think we can safely say, if it was going to work, it would have worked by now. Now here's where a lot of people will intervene and say, okay, smart guy, what's the answer? I don't know, but will you help me figure that out? Is my question, right? And will you engage with me in conversation so you can unlock more thoughts in my mind that I haven't considered? Because I've had this conversation frequently and with people on the other side of it, and they've brought up some brilliant points that I hadn't considered, though though no one has risen to the proof of why we should continue with the idea that hasn't worked ever. So, and there's that brings on a lot of questions. That brings up the concept of right and wrong, good and bad, and well, what do we do with people who do this thing or that thing? And again, I say I don't know, but thank you for asking the question, because it gives me something more to think about on that topic, and it's something I enjoy thinking a lot about, because those are valid questions, and my question to them is, I don't know. What is your thoughts on it?
Well, I have a couple thoughts, maybe just to engage in the discussion. So, and I guess I got maybe 3 or 4 thoughts. Maybe I'll just blurt them all out there, and then we can take one at a time.
Sounds good. The whole point of this is we're just engaging. We're just provoking conversation. So
I feel like throughout history, this goal of getting to unity, which I think is a worthy goal, there's been many attempts and many different methods to try to get there. Some people might call it utopia, this nirvana that we'll never get to.
I want to point one thing out, Daryl. It's not a worthy goal. It is actually our destiny.
Right.
It's unstoppable. I can assure you of that.
I don't mean to cheat. I didn't mean to
No, I just wanted to point that out, that maybe nobody has thought of that. That it is our destiny, and it is unstoppable. It will happen.
So history has shown us many examples of people who took that goal and the legitimate suffering and injustices that were in the world to gain political power, to gain, to use that as a means to an unjust end, to an ununited end. And really it makes me think of the founders of our country, where the revolution that we fought was about trying to find a more just law, a more just system. So equal protection under the law, equal opportunity. Now, that being said, I think there's also a lot of times where government goes beyond its appropriate duties and starts to get in the way of itself.
Sure.
And so I guess I get concerned when I think about how we approach that. Like the goal I know is right. But the other thought that came to my mind was Madison. He said, if men were angels, would have no need of government. But the fact that men aren't angels, we're imperfect. We're not nobody's perfect. And so to that end, sometimes ego or greed or other things play into motivations behind men or groups of men or people that that thwart us from getting to the goal of unity. And you even said, we've talked about it a number of times on the show, that the stories we tell ourselves often are the most limiting factors in our life. And you've used examples of Gandhi, who freed his people and didn't even have a weapon.
Yeah.
Nelson Mandela, or all these people through changing the stories they tell themselves, are able to create a new reality for themselves. And so I sometimes I think it's the difference between having correct laws and the right the right number of laws that makes equal opportunities and equal justice under the law. And again, I'll concede there's a lot of things about the justice system and the bureaucracy of it and the access to it, which I think is a problem. But I really think if people had the equal opportunities, is what we aspire to as in our nation anyway, and then also realize that they are a creative force, that things
Correct.
begin to change dramatically. I think when we look to the government to solve our problems, or to a different form of government to solve our problems, it's really more about like us understanding our stories and beginning to change those stories.
You know who can solve our problems?
There have been some real injustices in America, in the world, that we've addressed. I mean, I look at Martin Luther King and what he was able to do. Who would have ever thought at that time period that some of the reforms that have taken place since the 60s would even happen? But he had a dream, and he shared that vision and unified people around that vision, and huge changes and improvements were made. Now, I think the debate now is whether the color of my skin gives me more privilege than another. Is that a story? Is that a thermostat that I have set for myself? I don't know. I guess those are my thoughts. I mean, I think
Yeah. Deep thoughts.
when we start talking about how we get to unity, history has a lot of examples that have taken that motivation and people's sincere desire and used it for their own benefit.
Yeah.
Millions of
Deep.
people have lost their lives because of it.
Yeah, for sure. Right. So deep thoughts and great ones. I look at those as, well, they're questions, and questions open the heart and the mind, and statements close the mind and close the heart as well.
Yeah.
So I love questions. And one of my early on mentors, Dr. John D. Martini, would frequently point out that, the quality of our lives is determined by the quality of our questions. It's actually determined by the quality of a few things. Another mentor of mine, John Butcher, points out it's also the quality of your decisions, but truly the quality of your questions have an impact on the quality of your life. And so if you're not even asking any questions, it's really poor quality. And
Right.
And I look around right now, and that is one thing that I feel it disappoints me a little bit, the lack of question asking I see taking place right now in this whole thing multi things we're dealing with right now. That's a bummer that there's a lack of any questions. Forget about quality questions. There's just not even that many questions. But so who can solve well, and a point you brought up, and Henry Ford spoke on this, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said something to the effect of, as long as we look towards government and legislation to solve inequality, and he may even have mentioned poverty, which I would point out poverty is inequality. That's all poverty is. So as long as we look to government legislation to solve those issues, inequality will always be with us.
Something that you said, Don, that I think really stuck out to me too, though, was education.
Yeah.
Like, I think education makes a huge.
And one of the greatest minds, let me preface that with pointing out that one of the greatest minds of our time, and I'm sure I'm paraphrasing again, feel free to look it up. In fact, if anything we say encourages you to go research, then actually our goal is met here. So, but one of the greatest minds of our time, Albert Einstein, pointed out that there is a difference between education and learning. So let's just clarify that. Learning is not truly what's taking place currently in the American education system. So, but you're right, education is the key to unlocking these answers. But who can solve our issue is not elected officials or government. It's us.
Yeah.
And that this was an idea that was impressed upon our founding fathers, is that we have the power, not the government. And it's so true. The government doesn't have the ability, particularly in today's world, because the world evolves so fast. The way so as I pointed out before, one of the things that's going to take place in the next 2 to 3 decades is we'll change the way we govern ourselves, because the way we govern ourselves is outdated. That doesn't mean it was always a horrible idea the way we do it. That just means it no longer it's not what got us to where we are right now is not going to be what gets us to the next level. Yeah. And that can be said collectively or individually. And so this is one reason in my personal life, I'm always in the habit of forming new habits, because, and to quote Einstein again, the level of thinking that got me to where I am, which is a beautiful place, and which got us to where the level of thinking that got us to where we are, which is, yes, of course we have issues we're going to work on and we're going to solve, but the level of thinking that's got us to this place, which is a beautiful place, it's created some problems that our current level of thinking cannot solve.
Yeah.
So that's all, and that's okay. We're not going to beat ourselves up over it. We're just going to accept that and realize we have to be continually growing ourselves. We have to be continually doing that interior work that my mentor Robin Sharma talks about, that interior remodeling, because it has been said that you can change your hair, you can change your clothes, you can change your home, you can change the address of your home, you can change your spouse, you can change your car. But if you don't change yourself, the same experiences will perpetuate themselves over and over again, because everything outwardly changed, but nothing inwardly changed.
Yeah. Along the same lines, it reminds me, I heard it said that people will spend more money on the outside of their head than they will on the inside of their head.
Right.
They buy food, makeup, cologne, the work, but how much how
I've
much?
never considered that before. That's a good one. I like that. Oh man, yeah, that's so true. And I'm laughing because I'm not laughing at them. I'm laughing at me. I, as you said that, I look back at my own life and the times when now I spend more money on my inside than I
Yeah.
do my outside. But that
You
when
know,
that
now
was flipped.
when you talk about like changes in government, again, and maybe some of our listeners have the same
People get
going.
really uneasy about that conversation, but it's just a
Yeah,
conversation. It's
yeah.
just a
It's like,
conversation.
but I can see where, there was a time in our country when media, newspapers, they were pamphlets, there was things that people read and they paid for those. Politicians, it was an honor to serve your country, and it was very low paid wage. And now it seems like today's economics have changed that a little bit. Now media is a lot about getting clicks and advertising, and not necessarily trying to get the truth. Or even back in the early days of our country, some papers were very transparent on their ideology or their political viewpoint, and you just kind of knew that's what it was, and they were trying to forward an agenda. And now it's very blurred, and it's all about clicks. Is it really about getting the truth or getting to the bottom of the truth, or is it about getting more clicks? And then politics, it's become big business. Some of these politicians go into politics and they come out millionaires. And so again, if is it you're trying to serve your country, or is it you're trying to get reelected to keep your job for another 8 years or 4 years or 6 years? And so I think there are some things that that the motivations behind some of those activities have morphed over time, and maybe they don't serve us as well. And I'm sure that there's technologies and answers to remedy some of those situations, because and I think that's where sometimes people get frustrated on either side of the issue, feel like trying to just get to what's the truth. What are the facts? Because so many times you can feel like you're just not getting the full story. You're just clickbait, you know.
Well, an
But
interesting thought about, and it really is easy to blame our politicians. Uh, and I'm not defending them, but my point is that's the system we use. We can change it if we want to. So,
well, I think there's some sound principles in the foundations of our system, but I think the way that system's played out now is different now than it was
that system was as
800.
big of a change, which is why they refer to it as a revolution, because it was.
Yeah.
This is the same scope I'm talking about that's going to take place in the next 2 to 3 decades, is that magnitude of a change. And I'll tell you another thing. Look, I'm going to preface this with saying I really have come to and evolved to come to see myself as a global citizen, uh, which is a revolution in my own life. I'm going to just go ahead and, in the interest of, and I've talked about this idea before, and this is an idea that I not necessarily got from, but was really crystallized when I heard it put in these terms from Ray Dalio. And Ray Dalio currently runs the most successful is it hedge fund manager. Forgive me if I'm using the wrong terms, and if you want to crucify me for that and click off, you are more than welcome to, and I won't take it personal. But he calls it radical transparency when he talks about how he runs his company and his teams. and creating a space of radical transparency that allows for us to be transparent. And so in the spirit of that radical transparency and in the interest of promoting that idea, I'm going to tell you, Daryl, I don't think I've ever told you before, but look, I grew up in an isolated town in Wyoming of 300 people in the 70s and the 80s. And, you know, and hey, what a great way to grow up. But I was handed some ideas that were someone else's ideas, and they weren't, you know, I since came to realize they didn't serve me nor anyone else very well. And I can tell you, I could classify myself at a period of time back then as a very racist person. I'll tell you, I saw my first human with black skin at grade 6. That's the first time I saw a human with black skin, was when I was in the 6th grade. And it was actually a teacher of mine, and one that I just hold really fond memories of, because I just learned so much from Mr. Stevens. What an amazing individual. And so anyway, and then at age 15, I had the opportunity to move somewhere where because my skin was white, I was the minority. And I had the great privilege of getting to live like that. And I'm so grateful that I got to have that experience so early on now as a white middle-aged male, you know, probably the least popular person on the planet right now. But I can rise above my fears of being discounted because my skin is white and I'm a middle-aged and I'm a male. And I can rise above my fears of that and still have the courage to invoke these conversations. But yeah, so that was the beginning. It didn't change me instantly from being, you know, what I would consider a racist, someone who was racist, looked down at other people because of the color of their skin or even their gender. That was the beginning of my journey, my evolutionary journey, to move beyond that and evolve beyond that. That's just a lower level of intelligence. And, you know, and I eventually evolved to a higher level of intelligence, which is equality and unity. And, you know, because it doesn't take a lot of brain power, it doesn't take a lot of intelligence to judge quickly. Because of the color of the skin or the gender. That doesn't take a lot of intelligence. It takes a lot of intelligence to see beyond that. And it's a journey worth taking. I would encourage anyone to take that journey. So
why do you say you were racist before you saw a person, you know, of different skin color at 6? Like, did you have particular viewpoints, or did you look down on,
you know,
that? Just that lack, because it sounds like as you lived in Hawaii and were around other cultures, like that was like an experience, right? Like you're learning and you're experiencing and you're seeing.
Well, I learned that, you know, people wanted to harm me just simply because my skin was white. And I learned that within a few weeks of moving there. And that's an interesting experience.
Racism.
Yeah. And I don't hold anything against those individuals. Like I don't view myself as a victim, or I view that as just a beautiful opportunity that I had. And, you know, was it tough at that time period? Sure. Would I ever want to experience that again? No. It may happen again. I don't know. But would I ever change that experience? No. That, as Rumi points out, the wound is the place where the light enters. You know,
Yeah.
people will often say to me, well, you know, I want to develop these qualities, or I want my children to have these qualities. And, you know, so one of the questions I asked them, and I first heard this idea from a woman, powerful woman, great, great teacher that's currently walking the planet, Glennon Doyle. And, and so I asked them, you know, these questions that I've heard her ask, which is, hey, what are the qualities you want to have? What, you know, or that you want your children to have? Well, I want them to be compassionate and have empathy, and I want them to be kind, and I want them to be strong. And, you know, okay, well, where do you get those qualities? Because as I said in the beginning, you know, leaders are born in storms, not sunshine. So
Yeah.
that's the price of admission.
Yeah.
So when I understand that, I have more awareness, and now I can think differently about it. And I can look back and say that now I can look back with gratitude on those difficult
Yeah.
experiences. You know, something another mentor pointed out, Napoleon Hill, and also Jack Canfield talks a lot about this, another mentor of mine, that essentially anytime, you know, the universe or source or God, or, you know, you choose the label that works best for you. But anytime the universe takes something away from you, it gives you something of equal or greater value. Or that's the way Jack points it out. Napoleon Hill said, you know, buried within every hardship, and again, I'm paraphrasing, buried within every hardship is the seed of an equal or greater opportunity. Now, once you understand that, you can look at difficulties or, you know, bad experiences very different. So
Don't you think, I think like exposure and just experience with other cultures and other people, you know, you and I interviewed Carrie and talked when she talked about drug addiction. Remember, she said in there like she learned that once you get to know somebody, you'll never meet someone you didn't like. She said it a lot better than I did. But I remember growing up, and we had a foreign exchange student come from Mexico, and I remember being so fascinated because, you know, speaking a different language. I was just a young kid, and the only thing I know how to speak was English, and that seemed like normal, right? And the fact that he spoke Spanish was so fascinating to me. And I remember asking him, "How do you say my name in Spanish?" And he was like, "Daryl." I was like, "Oh, it's the same," you know. But
yeah.
Spanish. And then I lived in Korea for a while, and I remember being on a bus, and this guy about my age gets on the bus and was wearing like a sports clothes, looked like a basketball player, and I love basketball. And I was standing right next to him, and I couldn't understand Korean at the time. And I remember thinking, wow, I could turn to him. I remember thinking, we probably have so much in common. We probably both love basketball. We probably both love sports. But I could turn to him right now and start speaking in English, and he'd have no clue what I'm saying. And he could turn to me and start speaking to me in Korean, and I'd have no clue what he's saying. And the only barrier between us is like this language barrier, like the difference in language. But it was so fascinating to me. And as I learned the language, I realized, man, people are just like the same, you know, like it took some of the mystique out of it. But yet learning to appreciate their culture was such a beautiful experience. And then fast forward 10 years later, I'm back in Korea. At the time when I was first there, I never saw a 7-Eleven or a Pizza Hut or McDonald's. And 10 years later, I come back and there's one on every corner. And I remember talking to this young 20-year-old something kid, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't like kimchi. You know, I don't like it. I like hamburgers." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "Man, kimchi is like your traditional food, you know?"
Um,
And it was almost sad to me that maybe some of that was being lost in terms of like, you know, this globalization. But I mean, the founding fathers had this vision of manifest destiny, that the principles of freedom and individual liberty would spread throughout the world. But I think there's something very beautiful about culture and people's different cultures and where they come from. They didn't see America as ruling the whole world like a global nation, but they saw this vision of the principles of freedom, individual liberty spreading throughout the world, and in those own cultures and in those own countries being able to have those same opportunities and same protections. Um, so, and I guess I thought of that because I feel like racism is almost something that has to be taught. Because I feel like as a
It
kid,
is.
it
You're
was like
not
a,
born racist.
yeah, I was curious to and excited to experience other cultures and to learn and I went through the experience of struggling to learn a language and then the reward of realizing that like, wow, we're all on this planet having the same human experience. Just in some, it might be different languages, but even now, those language barriers are breaking down like dramatically through technology, computer games.
Yeah.
You can talk into your phone and it'll translate it instantly into another language.
Yeah.
Like the ability to communicate with, I think people are starting to realize just how alike we are, even though we may have different cultures and different customs, we're still the same as human beings.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So Daryl, like the best education anyone can get is travel. I mean,
Yeah.
to get that exposure and to
Yeah.
begin to see that we are one, we are the same. And that's just a matter of perspective. Yes, you are not born racist. I was not born racist. No one is born racist. That is something that's taught. The modern day version of what we call racism was created in the 15th century. Almost any historian could tell you that. And that's fascinating to go back and study. I'm not going to get into it,
Yeah.
but this was an idea that was introduced, and it's worked perfectly. It was essentially the same idea we see playing out today, which is if you cannot inspire people through your vision, the only way you can get people to follow you is through division, and it works perfectly. And the
Yeah.
easiest way and the quickest way to division is fear. And so and through this modern day version of racism, the idea is let's reduce people to a label. And we have a really bad habit of that as humans right now, reducing people to labels. So there are humans out there that will look at me and say, well, you are just a middle-aged, one label, white, second label, male, third label. And they've reduced me to that, and that's what I am. And then, we, and we're so stuck on currently as humans, dividing, one way or the other. It's this or it's that. It's black, it's white. It's you're a Republican or a Democrat. You're a conservative or a liberal. You're a and actually, no, I'm not any. I'm so much more, and everyone listening is so much more than that. And now it's come to, and I saw it coming, but now you are either a mask wearer or you're not a mask wearer.
I
And that's
do.
all you are. And that makes it really easy to dehumanize people and
Yeah.
not see each other as humans. And you pointed out language. I mean, you touched on a lot of things, and I still need to get back to my last point about the founding fathers and the USA, and some of the things we do great at, and some of the things we lead in, and some of the things we don't that trip us up. But
Yeah.
finishing up on these labels. So and you pointed out this language barrier, but even if you like the language you grew up in, neuroscience, and please, if don't take my word for it, please go and research anything we say, because Daryl, I wasn't down by the creek walking on water this morning before we came in. So, please check me and get that interest sparked in researching. But the neuroscience now knows that the language you speak, and there's roughly about 7,000 languages on the planet right now, shapes the way you think. And that makes sense. The words I use change the way I see things. So Daryl, if I, and we're so hung up on these labels, and that's the biggest That's the first issue we need to let go of to help us evolve to equality. Is we need to let go of our obsession with labels. So let me give you an example of how these labels shape the way we think. Daryl, if I see you and I say, oh, and I don't know you, we're in a crowded place, but I want to point something out about you, and I say, oh yeah, that white guy over there. And I could add other labels on there. But if I say that versus, oh, that guy over, the guy, like that's a label, right? Over in the corner with white skin, you know. You see, one of those, and we're not talking about being politically correct here. We're talking about evolving to a higher way of thinking, and it's a higher order of evolution to be empathetically genuine than it is to be brutally honest. And so, this isn't about politically correct. This is about letting go of the lazy thinking of labels and evolving to a higher order of thinking. And so if I label you as a human first prior to anything else, that's a more powerful thought in my mind. But if I label you anything other than a human first, now I can dehumanize you, and it's easier to not care about how anything I do affects you. And so in the interest of evolving to unity, we need to begin to label each other as human first. Right now, I constantly am hearing, oh, the Russians, the Chinese, those Chinese, Mm-hmm. Look, and rest assured, they're over there going, oh, those Americans,
Yeah.
Is that all we are? We're so much more. You're so much more than that. Now, and that's just my thought on that. Using the label of a human first before anything else. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what do you think prevents? Because I think I think if we just look in today's climate with things that are going on, I think there's whether it's this new term mask shaming, those who wear a mask, all these different things. It's like I feel like there's a climate where people are afraid to engage in discussion. Like we're having a discussion right now, and we're acknowledging we don't have all the answers. We're asking the questions, but there seems to be an element where if you ask the question, then you must be a racist. If you ask the question, you must be a right winger. If you don't just accept what we're saying, then there is something wrong with you.
You know what?
Whatever you're saying. So what creates that dynamic where people are afraid to now just have a discussion? Part of, I think, what made our country great and was a big shift was that people had the right to assemble and engage in peaceful protest and share their ideas and discuss, right, and vote.
That's a revolutionary idea.
And debate, right? Where in times past that was illegal. You would be thrown in prison. You would be, But there seems to be this climate where if you even question whatever is perceived to be the status quo, and it doesn't matter which side of the issue you're on, it feels like there's like this element that if you even question or even want to engage in debate, then it must automatically be that you are racist or you are a right-wing nut job, or
we want to throw the label, right?
Yeah, want to throw the label. You're clinging to your Bible and your guns, or
so whatever. You've hit it. You hit what it is, Daryl, and it's fear. It's fear, and we talk a lot about fear, right? And on our team and in our discussion, we talk a lot about fear because fear is so paralyzing. But fear is just an emotion like any other emotion. And we just have to, it's all about learning a healthy way to process the fear. The fear will never go away. We've talked about this. You know, we want to take the fear out of the driver's seat, put it in the passenger seat. It can be in the car with us, but it's not going to be driving, right? So it's all about the way we process that fear in a healthy manner. And that's something that having a having good coaches and mentors in your life can teach you. And so they are people are so paralyzed with fear that they when I see, look, the way I know that you're afraid is when I evoke a conversation and you aggressively attack me for that.
Yeah.
You know, which I'm glad I know that, because now I can not take it personal.
Right.
I realize, and I learned this from the mentor the person who's mentored me the most in my life, Lisa Nichols. But this is a concept I learned from her, that you're telling me when I mention something and you aggressively attack me or try to silence me, those are the two things happening right now. That's how I know that you're afraid. And that's how I know, like, that's how I recognize, oh, you're telling me your story, not my story, you know?
Yeah.
And when I
I think
realize
it's
that, I can
powerful.
keep from taking that personal.
Yeah.
Right.
I
And
heard a simple example of that. And this is a simplified example, but if I meet you on the street and I don't know you and I say, you know what, you're stupid, and that makes you mad, that might be because in your heart of hearts you agree with the story that you're stupid, and maybe you're thinking, I don't
there's
know.
certainly some doubt there that maybe you are, right?
Yeah, how does
Now,
we take offense? Otherwise, if we didn't have that story, we'd be like, you don't know me, like
yeah,
that's
like when I woke up this morning, and again, thank you to my most profound mentor, Lisa Nichols, for sharing this with me. But Daryl, when I woke up this morning, I liked myself. And
yeah,
so everybody else's like is just extra. And that includes a significant other, that includes children, uh, that includes parents, that includes everyone, because I have to like myself first uh, before I can free anyone else to be whoever they are. So anytime I'm experiencing judgment towards another person, I've come to recognize, by having great mentors and coaches in my life, that that's an issue inside of me. There's something inside of me that's frightened by that can't face whatever it is about them that's bothering me. So that's my signal, my indication that I need to do some more interior remodeling.
yeah,
And that's it. So, you know, when you find yourself aggressively attacking someone, it's not that some of the discussions going out there right now don't initially, like, you know, look, I'm human. We're all human. We're
right,
kind of animals on this planet to a degree, right? We're highly evolved now compared to previous. But my first reaction is just, you know, like knee-jerk reaction, anger, whatever. But if I can just let that emotion work through me and recognize that that's an evolutionary thing,
right,
before I respond, then I can think on a higher level. And so it's about how to process these emotions healthy. And before, you know, don't reply when I'm angry, because that's a reaction. Well, I don't want to react. I want to respond. When I react, I give away my power. When I respond, I retain my power.
yeah,
And so I want to let those emotions flow through me first. And you know, it's not written in stone anywhere that I have to respond immediately to anything. Uh, and so I give myself permission to let those emotions flow through me before I make my response. So that's really what it is. Look, a lot of people are afraid right now. You know, because there's a lot of scary thoughts and conversations taking place. And there's, yeah, it is intriguing. And right now is a great time that people will point out to me when I say things like, we're about to next level this shit as humans. People want to point to right now. And look, I get that right now that we're experiencing a short period of entropy. But if you look, I'm maybe it's the researcher in me, the investor in me, that because I make decisions off information, not emotions. I'm not saying I don't feel emotion. I'm saying I take control over my emotions, not the other way around. And so I need to gather more information. And here's the information that I have, which is when you look at humanity as a whole, it's we've progressed, we've evolved. There's been short periods of entropy, but so it's cyclical, but we always emerge and move beyond that. Like that's our pattern. So that's a lot of data, all of human history. So so to look at the moment now that we're stuck in, and I think that's part of the issue is we're stuck in this moment. If I can zoom out and look at all of human history, collect more data, then I can see that, this is a speed bump. This isn't a roadblock. This isn't a stop sign. This is a speed bump. And again, then I can also see the pattern of not only do we make it past that, we always next level it when we move past it. So that's how I can speak with confidence that we are like this is the signal that we are about to completely next level that shit as humans. And like we're gonna blow your mind as humans. Like we are about to enter in that era of unparalleled prosperity. And I'll tell you, look, so yeah, I view, and to get back to what I was getting to before, where I view myself as a global citizen, but I my culture, those cultures are beautiful. We never want to lose them. So and I just think about the horrible times the dominant culture of any period or era tried to stamp out a culture, and that just turns my stomach. But my message is if you, whatever your culture is, please continue to hold on to that. So my children and my grandchildren and my great grandchildren get the great privilege that I have of having exposure to your culture and your traditions. Now please let go of the ones that no longer serve you, but hold to that culture, because it's a gift and you get to share it with the rest of the world, and just step into that. But so my culture is the United States. We're coming up on 250 years, right? 250 years ago, a group of, a portion of the population was able to achieve, even though the whole team wasn't playing, a group of men, all with the same skin color. So not a full representation of humanity, but even with that small group of the team participating, was able to have the next level flow through them from the creative source and introduced into humanity. And it was an experiment, and look, we're still experimenting with it. And they formed a republic, and it was revolutionary. And look, if you think time, okay, I get that there's division right now, but it's not the worst it's ever been, guys. Like you may recall, we had a civil war one time. That's pretty divided, right? That was pretty bad. That's pretty rough. And 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 even with the founding fathers, like if you're having visions or ideas of that, it was just they were unanimous and it was so easy for them to. This was hotly debated, and many disagreed and didn't want to go down that route because they knew it meant war at the time. That it would mean war, and many didn't even agree. Many, loved their home country. So, but they were able to put aside their egos, and they started us on a new journey. They introduced a new idea, and ultimately, that idea that has not been fully realized yet, but it's a journey that we're on, and that is true equality. That is what they began. They set that in motion for us. I've actually heard a lot of, not great things about some of those founding fathers lately. And well, Jesus, of course, they were people. So if, I'm not going to hold them to the standard of perfection, which I'm able to do that because I don't hold myself to the standard of perfection. So, if you can let go of that idea in yourself, you can let go of trying to place that standard on other people. But they set something in motion, and that's what we owe of gratitude for them. Not that they didn't get it perfect, that they set it in motion. And we are now playing our part as has the generations in that 250 years. We've continued to inch further to that main goal of true equality. Now, so as an American, that's my culture, and I am very patriotic. I love my country, even though I consider myself a global citizen. And one thing that's always bothered me about America, I guess not always bothered me, because I used to be one of the participants that would make the claim that America is the best. We're the best. Now, one thing I hadn't considered when I would make that blanket statement like that is, well, what is the metric that we're measuring that off of? Like, how do you define that to me? Like the best what? So that's my question for everyone to consider. But because there are some things that we are not the best at, but I'll tell you one.
I think that could be a function of like where you're from, because I remember being in Korea as a student, going to the university, and I stayed with a family that their son and I were friends.
Yeah.
And I remember the husband came home one night, and he had been drinking, and he said to me, he goes, I would never want to go to America.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, really? And I hated this when people would say, oh, I'd never want to live in Korea. And I would go, oh, really? Did you live there? You just didn't like it? Like, oh, no, I've never been there. And I'd be like, well, then how would you know you wouldn't like living there? Anyway, this Korean gentleman says to me, I would never want to live in America. And I'm like, really? Why is that? Well, everybody knows Korea is the best. And in my head, I was thinking, what? Don't you watch the news? No, it's not. America's the best, right? And then it hit me. I was like, oh, man, I bet you could go to any country in the world, and they'd be like, you know what? Saudi Arabia is the best country in the whole world. And
probably,
because I think that's just where people
So my real question is, what are those people best at? Because there are going to be things that they are best at that, and that's just how it works, right? So being an entrepreneur, it took me a long time to learn and grasp the concept of, look, I'm not the best at everything, nor should I be, nor do I need to be. That was just my ego. And I couldn't let go of that, I had to do everything. And that was, as an entrepreneur, is a formula for disaster. But, so learning to let go of the things and recognizing where I am best at, what I'm best at, and staying in that arena, and then finding other people who are best at doing those things that I'm not. And that was a valuable lesson. But so now on a global scale, what are they the best at? And let go of our ego. It's okay that they're best at that. Now they can contribute that area. We'll contribute where we're best, So a lot of people are really, I've actually heard a lot about lately, and concerned that, look, every great civilization's disappeared. The idea that you think America can be here forever, like you're just not understanding history. And so that's intriguing to me, is something I've studied recently and still am dabbling in, is what has caused these great civilizations in the past to disappear. And it's a concern of mine, just simply because I love my country, and I when I think about, we're about to take it to the next level, we're going to change the way we govern ourselves, educate ourselves, and that kind of thing. I've realized that probably the only two ways to that are the same ways to evolution and the next level in my own life, which is, I can either get ahead of the curve and take the initiative and do the interior work and put the time into improving myself and get to the next level myself, or I'll get the invitation by getting kicked in the teeth by life.
Yeah.
It's one of those two ways. Like, you choose. For the longest time, I chose the kicking in the teeth, and it's a slower method and it's a lot more painful. And then one day I just finally had enough of getting kicked in the teeth and decided I'm going to get ahead of this, and I'm going to take my evolution into my own hands and improve myself every day to avoid more of those painful situations. So collectively, as a people, I think there's roughly 335 million of us now. And my message to my fellow countrymen is we can either take this head on ourselves, and I know we have it in us to do it, because we're the one people who's done it. Like, we did that. That was our beginning. So if there is and ever was a people on the planet where it's most likely to happen, it's us. It's us. And I can really feel that. Does that mean it's going to be us? No, but guys, we're the only group that's done it, as far as like this revolutionary idea of full equality. And we've been on this journey, and we've had our scars along the way, and that worries me sometimes, particularly when I look out now, and I know we're different, but when did we begin thinking that our differences were our weakness? Our differences have always been and are our strength. That's what makes us strong, is our differences. And yeah, part of the idea of freedom means that we allow all these different ideas, and that means, consequently, we're not always going to get along.
Yeah.
But that's part of it. That's okay. Like, that's how it works. But like I said, our strength or our differences is what makes us strong. That's what's allowed us. Look, I mean, to illustrate this a little bit, and again, pointing out, it looks pretty rough in America right now, but I want to point out a couple things, and one of them is a pattern. But first, let me point out that as part of that pattern, let me preface it by pointing out, and I also want to point out again, I am not saying we're the best. We need to let go of that ego, and recognize that we're all one. and let's quit acting like we're the best. Let's embrace the parts that we are best at, and embrace the parts of the other groups of people around the world that they're best at, and put those pieces together and create an unstoppable team. And usher in that, and that's how we would usher in that unparalleled prosperity. So I'm not talking about unparalleled prosperity for Americans. I'm talking about for our planet, our species. We're pushing 8 billion now. And I think, please, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Daryl, or anyone research it. But I believe the prediction is by it's either 2035 or 2050, will be around 10 or 11 billion. And that don't worry me. That's 2 billion, 3 billion more minds to help contribute to this evolution. But so back to, what we are good at as Americans, and the part we can play, and we can let go of those parts we're not good at, and quit acting like we are good at everything, the best at everything, because we're not. But the parts we are best at, look, we are roughly just under 4%. Is it 4% of the world population? But what an example of what a group of people, and such a small group of people, 4% of the population, what an example of what can be achieved with the idea of unity. Now, I want to point out a pattern in relation to the things that we have achieved in the last 250 years, particularly, we'll go the whole 250 years, and what that small group of people has been able to achieve in relation to this pattern that I've noticed recently as I was studying our history. The pattern in the United States from the very beginning, from its inception, has been, and my suggestion is we are neck deep in this pattern right now. Our moment to shine in America has always been when we're on the ropes and we're about to go down. And look, we are right now. And we still live in a world of non-unity. And if you think there aren't people watching right now thinking of ways to take advantage of our division right now, that's a really myopic way of viewing the world. But my point is like the pattern from the very beginning, from the Revolutionary War to this moment in time right now, although this moment is still unfolding, but I am confident to say that it's going to unfold the same way. We get a little lackadaisy in the U.S., and we get a little comfortable, and we get an invitation to get uncomfortable and take it to the next level. And it's always been the pattern of we're about to go down. We're on the ropes. It looks like we lost. It looks like we're done. Revolutionary War, 6 months in, George Washington makes one last bold move. Like the war was over. We lost. It was over. We had been beat. And one of his top generals, if not others, I'm not a historian, but that doesn't disqualify me from discussing our history. And so again, please go research and find out what I'm leaving out or what I may be a little off on. But one of his top generals urged him at a dinner just before Christmas to give it up. We lost. The British, they were drafting the terms of surrender. And they were literally just waiting for the Delaware River to freeze over so they could march their army across. And like, that was it. That was the only thing we were waiting on. And dude, we were on the ropes and we were done. And George Washington gave it one last Hail Mary. He had an inspired idea to float his army of 2,000 farmer boys across the Delaware River and march 10 to 12 miles south. I forget the name of the town, but there was a Haitian army.
Mm-hmm.
So mercenaries, a hired army from the British. They're very skilled, battle experience, top gear for the time. And to march his farm boys, some of them didn't even have shoes and on the brink of starvation on Christmas morning. So spent the night, Christmas Eve, floating these 2,000 men and supplies, cannons, horses across the Delaware, icy Delaware. And they were supposed to be across before the sun came up to march south and get to the town before the sun came up. They didn't get all their supplies and people across the river until after sunrise. And George Washington says, we're going. He knew it was do or die. This was it.
Yeah.
And he gave it a Hail Mary. They marched. They didn't get to the town until I believe after 8 a.m. And as he had suspected, the soldiers, because the arrogant are often, overconfident, who would march against them? And so they spent the Christmas Eve partying, and they woke up late. Thank God they really partied it up, because, they slept in. When George Washington got there with his army, if you can call it an army, some wouldn't have called it. There were people at the time who didn't call it an army. And they surprised him, and they beat this army. I think it was 1,200, and not one U.S. soldier lost his life. Unbelievable, but yeah. That was the beginning of that pattern. So, I mean, just look at it again throughout history. Every time we have been on the ropes, one gut punch away from falling. And that is when we shine. I'll tell you, that is what we do the best at. So anyone betting against America right now really has never studied our history. Now, why are we the best at that? It's the dream of unity. We have one common core belief and dream that we all unite around right at that moment we're about to go down. And it's such a powerful motivation. And it's that promise that our founding fathers set in motion, the promise that we have yet to realize, but that I strongly believe we're going to do it. We're going to be the shining example. If any one group of people on the planet is more likely to do it, it's us. Because what we are best at is uniting around that promise of true equality and true unity. Right when we are about to go down, that is the motivator. That is the piece where we catch our second wind. We come from behind every time. And guys, we're behind. But I'm telling you, you're really, if you're betting against America, that's a really bad idea. You need to study our history. We are going to come from behind, and we're going to rise up, and we're going to shock the world just like we have for the last 250 years, whether it was World War I. And I'm not an advocate for war, because again, I'm confident by the turn of the next century, war will disappear. The idea of killing other people is a really lower level of intelligence. But World War I, when we entered it, No, as Americans, World War II, man, we got the gut punch in Pearl Harbor, and we were done. We were done. And, the president at the time, uh, I think I got a little nervous and his name slipped my mind.
Roosevelt.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm human. I still get a little nervous, but Roosevelt, has a meeting after Pearl Harbor, and it wasn't immediately after, but with his top generals and advisors, and they were defeated. Like, we were done. They gave all the reasons why we're done. And, predictions of, if the Japanese invaded, they would make it all the way to the Midwest before we could stop them. And by this time, Roosevelt had lost the use of his legs and was in a wheelchair, and had an inspiring moment. He got so pissed off, basically, at what he was hearing from his fellow countrymen that he stood up on his own two legs, on his own strength, and said to them, "Don't tell me that it can't be done, that we can't rise above this, that we can't punch back." So whether it was that, and then again in World War II, the Battle of Midway, it's like it was do or die, guys. We have faced this so many times. Guys, the Russians, the label, I'm going to use the label, and just in context of history, in the 60s, the Russians, like they launched the first satellite into space, and then they launched the first human into space. They beat us. We were done. And then we put the first human being on the surface of the moon. And then another, and then another. And so such a small, my point is look at such a small group of people of the entire human population, and what is achievable through unity. So, I like to imagine a world of when, the armies disappear and we quit wasting our resources on that. And I see a united population of 8 billion, 10 billion, what can they achieve? I mean, I look at what we've achieved here. I mean, when you think about those aircraft carriers and what a modern marvel those are, floating cities, if we can create a craft like that, if we all pooled our resources together to stop, designing weapons to kill each other, what could we design to, head out among the stars and explore the stars? What kind of crafts could we create? Because if you took an aircraft carrier back to, Columbus's time or the Vikings' time, or the Egyptians' time, and, they saw that there you could never convince anyone sober back then that a craft like that would be possible. So, I'm telling you, we're going to come from behind. It looks a little rough, but don't count us out yet. This is the rallying point where we're going to unite. But this is the pattern. We always get on the ropes. It always looks divided. People always think we're done. We're not done. And I guess my point is like, if there's a group of people that could be the shining example to the rest of the world, we can do that. We've done it before. And, when it comes to changing the way, letting go of these expired ideas that were revolutionary when they were instituted, but now they're expired and they don't serve everyone. And they never did. And that wasn't the point of the beginning of it. It was a stepping stone. But now the creative source is ready for new ideas to be introduced into humanity. And, we can be that group of people that does that. And we just have to let go of our ego and, evolve. evolve ourselves to a better idea that will mean more prosperity.
Don, we're going to take a break right here, but when we come back, we've been talking about an era of unparalleled prosperity that we're about to enter into, and I want to get some final thoughts when we get back.
Sounds good.
All right, we're back with Don Rushing. Don, thanks for staying on for another segment.
Yeah.
Don, when we talk about ushering in this new era of unparalleled prosperity, share a little bit about what that looks like and what that means for the individual. Someone might be listening and be like, yeah, this sounds great, but what does that mean for me? And maybe just share some thoughts on that.
I think that can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different individuals, because currently we structure our societies in a manner that doesn't work for everyone, that not everyone gets to fully participate in for various different reasons. And so for those individuals, it could be, and I think part of it is fully realizing that dream that was started by our founding fathers of true equality. And so for those individuals, it's going to mean they get an equal seat at the table. Now, there are those who that may initially be frightened by that, because that may mean that their quality of life may go down. And all I really want to say about that is that's, and I think we touched on this earlier, that's the greatest lie in humanity, that there's not enough resources for all 8 billion, or when there's 10 billion of us, oh my God, there's going to be even less resources. But as another mentor that I've studied a lot from points out, Peter Diamandis, one of the great thinkers and entrepreneurs of our time, points out that, like, people keep saying, as there's more of us, you have to slice the pie in smaller and smaller pieces. And he just says, dude, make more pies. We're not limited to one pie. Now, we know that now. And as he points out, something really profound as well, that the earth, like we used to believe until recently that we were literally confined to the resources of this planet. And as he points out, that the earth is just a crumb in a supermarket full of resources. We've learned in the last few years, we've made some amazing discoveries that now are just like, oh yeah, there's water worlds out there, or, oh yeah, there's precious, these metals that we thought were precious metals, only found in super small quantities in limited places on the planet, are, as it turns out, they're zooming past us in the asteroid belt all the time, or asteroids that aren't part of the asteroid belt. And so, you have companies, and Peter Diamandis has one of these companies, Planetary Resources, and there are others that have the goal of mining these near Earth asteroids for precious metals. So my point is like, we're not confined to the resources of this planet anymore. And we can speed up the access to those resources if we stop fighting each other over the lack of resources. That's really, why historically we've had armies, is, either one, we need to protect the limited resources we have from other people, or two, we need to go get their resources, and we need militaries for that. And so that's all stems from the lie that there's a finite amount of resources, and there's really not. I mean, it's funny. I always, when I think about story, so I grew up religiously. Religion is something I believe will evolve past by the turn of the next century as well, on this quest to unity. But growing up religiously, I would hear stories about, heaven has their streets paved with gold. And, I think that was just quite possibly a story made up about, oh, look at the resources. Like that clearly came from a mind who has this idea of limited resources, and sort of illustrate, how great it is in heaven. Their resources are so vast that they're paving their streets with gold. Well, there's an asteroid floating around our solar system called, and I forget why they called it Psyche 16. But anyway, as it turns out, that thing's mostly solid gold. It contains possibly so much gold that it would make every man, woman, and child on the planet right now a trillionaire. And then that gets into other questions of, well, that would decimate the economy. Well, yeah, money's just made up. I mean, yeah. It's not a tree. It didn't grow in the forest. This was something someone thought up, and it took us to the level of prosperity we're at. But again, it's a system that doesn't necessarily work for everyone. So,
makes you think about what's real wealth. I mean, even if we had all the gold, you can't eat it.
Right. I think it's more inside probably than anything, but yeah, let's go grab that thing and pull it down here, and we'll pave our own streets with gold. Like, this idea that we need to wait for something better when we have the ability to create something better for ourselves. Another horrible lie in humanity is that we don't have the power to rescue ourselves and save ourselves. We're waiting for someone else to show up. If we're not alone, maybe they'll show up and help us solve all our problems. Or growing up religiously, I was always taught the idea, in the next life, you're free from the responsibility of that in this life, and I'm here to tell you, we showed up to the planet with the ability to be our own rescue. We have the ability to save ourselves, and the way to that, the path to that, or the key to that, is unity. We've reached an era in humanity where the problems we're facing, which are just learning opportunities for growth. So I really hate to use the word problem, because the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest opportunities for growth and prosperity. But these issues like climate change, and which is a whole nother discussion, the idea of justice and punishment, the idea of governing as we know it now, the idea of limited resources, the idea of, a lack of clean water, a lack of feeding all of the population. These are things now, they're big enough now that we will only be able to solve them collectively. It will take the collective thinking of 8 billion minds, or in the future, 10 billion minds. And maybe that's the point of the population growth, because now we're going to need to rely on ourselves collectively and work together. And we can do that, just look at the different nations, different groups of people. You're seeing an evolution in humanity. That's why I say it's our destiny, and it's the only direction we're going, and it's unstoppable. And throughout history, you just keep seeing the world's getting smaller, and larger groups of people band together, and it's going to be an entire planet in our lifetime. That I can assure you. But that doesn't mean, I just want to sit back and watch for it to happen. I think we have a moral obligation to move in that direction. And that's going to mean, me letting go of my ego. And thank goodness we don't live in a world where it's all my way, or all someone else's way. It works best, a little bit my way, a little bit your way. It's those differences that make us strong. That's not just in the United States. That's that's on a global scale. And it's a glass ceiling what we can achieve. And so unparalleled prosperity, for those individuals that are afraid, if we let everyone have a seat at the table, that's going to mean less for them. It's actually not. It's going to mean more for everyone. If you think you have a prosperous life now, even if you're a millionaire or billionaire, it's unmatched what your prosperity could be if we let everyone have a seat at the table. Because again, the earth is just a crumb in a supermarket full of resources. And if we, pooled our resources together and ventured out among the stars, what more prosperity can we usher in? That in and of itself is an interesting conversation.
What about for the individual that says, hey, this is great, we can bake more pies, but how do I get a bigger piece?
Well,
out in this,
because the thing is there's no limit to the pies that we can bake. So, and these are interesting questions. Here's a question I often think of when I think about unity and my current involvement in real estate investing and developing, which basically deals with houses and of course commercial property. But a question I often think of is in a world where individual identity is so important to the prosperity of the human race as a whole, how do we create enough housing for everyone, but is still, where they're not a cookie cutter. They're still individualized, but everybody has one of equal value, equal quality. I don't know the answer, but it's a great question. And unless we ask the question, we'll never find the answer. That's why I love questions. We'll never find an answer to anything unless we ask a question. So that's something I think a lot about. The answer is, locked up in other human minds. So please come to the table and join. When you find yourself wanting to silence other points of view or people asking questions, that's how you're moving in a lower quality and less empowering direction. And so there's so many conversations, that really important conversations we need to be having that we're not having. And so I guess, I view part of my purpose is initiating those conversations. I know I'm not the only human on the planet that feels that's part of their purpose, but the creative source, the creators, whatever you want to call it, calls or inspires many different people to the same purpose, because I'm not going to resonate with everyone. And, and I'm not comparing myself to these people that I'm about to name. Because by the way, comparing, the only person you really want to compare yourself to is the person you were yesterday. And that's it. So, but Gary Vaynerchuk's not going to resonate with everybody. Lisa Nichols is not going to resonate with everybody. Maya Angelou, someone who taught me two very powerful things, is not going to resonate with everyone. Martin Luther King is not going to resonate with everyone. Oprah's not going to resonate with everyone. So Elon Musk is not going to resonate. So this is why you hear different people around the planet discussing the same things, because that's how you reach a individual population of 8 billion people. So that's just how it works. But hopefully we've sparked some thought today and engaged a conversation. This is one of those important conversations. And I do need to mention one more thing. Changing our education system is another way to unlocking that unity. You know, there's so many things we do that one don't work for everybody, and two have never worked for everybody. We need to stop thinking they were the answer and start recognizing that they were just a stepping stone to the next level, which is not the answer. It's just a stepping stone to the next level, which isn't the answer. It's just a stepping stone to the next, you know. So let us have the courage to let go of these expired ideas we still play with. We don't need to be afraid of the next way of doing it. You know, evolution is going to happen whether we want it to or not. I'm saying let's just embrace it and usher it in quicker.
Well, I think you pointed out some really important things to note. The fact that we're going to next level this stuff and move to a higher level, that as our history has shown us, when we're up against it, we always overcome. And so that if people are wanting to catch that wave instead of get pummeled over it, it's about, you pointed out also about seeing problem as gold mines. And if we can take those problems and find solutions, spend less energy scaring each other and fighting with each other, but just actually solving some problems, that's going to be a path to prosperity for a lot of people in this new reality.
Yeah, lots to talk about in here. I just really hope everyone will join the conversation, and because we need everyone. And so I'm not afraid to have others engage in the conversation. It's okay. I give myself permission to have some not so good ideas. But maybe I've got some good ones in there, and that's how I can contribute. But the biggest way is just sparking that conversation and getting those other minds engaged so I can see perspectives that I can't see while I'm trapped inside of myself, you know? So I got to get people from outside to contribute. So yeah, hopefully we get more people engaged in these conversations.
Well, I think you definitely brought up some things that people can engage on, and hopefully we'll see more of that conversation in the future, and people being open to sharing ideas and discussing with one and actually learning from each other. Don, thanks for the time today, and look forward to having you back.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Daryl.